All right. Welcome to episode 96 of the Jake Blanchard podcast. My guest today is Jesse McLaughlin. He's involved in the biopharmaceutical industry and more specifically services clients with the most basic ingredient, biological need. We're talking about water today. And he is also the host of Modern BioPharma podcasts. He joins me now. Jesse, thanks for joining me on the show, man.
Thanks for having me, Jake. It's going to be fun. I'm excited.
For sure. First off, where are you joining me from today? Where are you physically located?
So I am physically above my garage in my home office in New Hampshire. I'm in a town called Hampton Falls, just north of Boston.
Oh, very nice. I am physically located on top of my garage in my home office in Middleton, Idaho, which is very nice. And then you have a cage behind you. Is that where you sit in timeout? What do you got going back there?
Not in this cage. No, this one I don't think could hold me. But no, we have a dog breeding business for our family, and this is one of the places that we do like personality testing for our dogs. And we're in the middle of right at the end of a whole couple litters of puppies about to go home. And so when this podcast is over, my daughters and wife will be coming up and doing personality testing on about 10 puppies up here. So I will have to vacate the premises when they do that.
Help me understand how that works. I've never understood the personality test. I've actually never even heard of it.
Yeah. So there's a whole bunch of different things, and it's not like a disc test or Enneagram test for puppies, but ultimately we're just trying to understand, what kinds of sort of broader perspective, what kind of things are they going to be like? Are they going to be responsive to people's needs? Are they going to be more skittish or more friendly? Things like that. And then that way we're able to line them up with we have a whole bunch of buyers, and we're trying to line them up with the families that are coming in as appropriately as we can as a result.
Yeah. So it's funny that you kind of made a nod that it wasn't like an actual like test, but there's not like an ENFJ, like a Myers-Briggs, like, hey, this is your type, or do they kind of get a label?
I probably should know this, but I don't do it. My daughters and my wife do. My wife, I watch it, and they have like how driven are they? How, do they have prey drives? Like, are they wanting to go after, like if they were in the wild, they want to go after animals or not? How like sympathetic are they to humans, things like that. So that's the kind of stuff they're testing for. And again, like if you have a family with kids or like a family without kids, those kind of things really impact ultimately what you want. I will tell you that everybody that buys a puppy wants one that will go for hikes on them when they climb a mountain, and then sit on their lap when they're watching the game for 7 hours, and sit in their crate all night long and never make a noise. So there's like this perfect puppy that really kind of doesn't exist, but it's pretty fun to try and match them up.
The Swiss Army dog.
Yes, exactly.
Sure. Well, good, man. Hey, first off, thanks again for joining me on the show. I'm super fascinated in the world that you're in. I know very little about it, which is why I'm fascinated by it. So I'm hoping that you can start to get me educated a little bit. One, I'd love to know about you and your career progression, how you found yourself in this kind of like niche in the biotechnology, biopharma. Sorry that I kind of butcher the names of it or interchange them.
We make it up.
Yeah. Space. And then let's start talking about water, man. Because like, I've got water in front of me today. I'm drinking it. I'm taking it for granted. It's glory, everything that it is. But water gets processed in a lot of different ways. And I think that we tend to maybe underappreciate what that might mean in manufacturing or, all the creature comforts that we get in life. So let's start with you, and then let's go pursue a fun conversation around water.
So for me, I got started in my career. I was in the military. I was in the Air Force for about 5 years as an engineer, project manager kind of a role. While I was in the Air Force, worked on nuclear missiles and space stuff. Yeah, I know it's a far cry from where I'm at today, right?
This is pre Space Force days, right?
This is pre Space Force. Funny enough, now that I'm old and getting gray, my classmates from college and stuff, they're like the people that are starting to be in charge of that. So it's kind of fun to sort of see that happen. So that's where I got started. When I got out, didn't really know what I wanted to do. I had a brief job where I didn't really go anywhere, and I decided I wanted to get into sales. I didn't feel like I was an engineer at heart, and I wanted to get into sales. And so I started to do that, and right away got into sort of the water chemical space. and I've bounced around, over the years. That was in 2007, a few different places, but really started to hone in living here in New England with the biotech space, because there's so much up here.
Oh yeah.
Cambridge is pretty famous for it, right? So that's kind of where I've really tried to focus my efforts. And where I'm at now, I've been here for 3 years, and just working hard at trying to serve the pharmaceutical industry specific, which has gotten a little bit of press in the last couple of years, if you hadn't noticed.
Oh sure.
So it's been a fun one to be a part of, and see the different kinds of growth and different kinds of things that I think are progressing. I mean, the world of pharma is blowing up right now, and there's all kinds of new stuff that's pretty exciting to be a part of.
Yeah, absolutely. And so again, you went through the military, engineering degree, gravitated towards sales, progressed in a sales career, and then where who are you with now? Like, what do you like? The organization, those types of
Yep.
things.
Yeah. So I work for a company called Aquachem, and we do, as a company, we actually do water systems for all different types of things. We do military systems, like all the naval, Navy boats and stuff have water systems on it, right? Because guys got to be able to drink, and there's boilers and stuff that need water. They don't want
Oh,
salt water. They don't want salt water in their boilers, right? So there's systems in there. There's systems on oil platforms. That's the kind of stuff we do. There's systems that's making water for beverage companies. So that's another big industry that we serve. So, your Dasanis and things like that. Everybody's
yeah.
from Aquafine. Everybody's really familiar with those kind of brands. So we make equipment that makes that water. And then I am specifically in the pharmaceutical industry only. So we serve major pharmaceutical companies that need water to make the medicines that everybody uses every day.
Okay, let me ask a stupid question about water really quick, and this might not be related to your industry, but the city of Flint, Michigan, went
Yeah.
through some serious water quality issues. Um, does the type of work that you do support the cities in that way, or anything like that, or is that completely different?
Yeah. So first off, what we call that in the industry is more like a municipality type water generation,
Yeah,
production, filtration. I believe it's been a bit. I think that was like 5 years ago or so.
it
I
could be
think that was
10.
mostly
Who
related to the
knows?
distribution of the water. So like that's all the pipes that go out, right? So you have a main production plant somewhere where they're doing all different processes to get to get the water drinkable, and then it goes through pumps and pipes to get out to the different homes and businesses. And I think it was that system that was actually the problem, where
Uh,
I can't remember. I think it was lead, that they had like lead lined pipes or something from 100
yeah.
years ago still.
Yeah, that's I remember it wasn't a good thing, but I just wanted to get
Yeah.
aligned in
Yeah.
context. Like, is that an avenue that we could explore? But it sounds like this is more,
Yeah.
that's
Those are
going
like
on.
big, giant construction project type
Got it.
equipment. Ours is more, we deliver it on a truck into a building, or whatever. It's a little bit more like the size of my garage rather than the size of my property.
Oh, cool. So, and again, I told you I'm interested in this space. I know very little. The one thing that I do know is that about 8, maybe 10 years ago, my friend Darren, who owns a company here in Boise, or co-owns a company, I don't know how to describe it, but they make tanks that
Hmm.
wash like silicone wafers.
Yep.
And again, experience simpleton here, but I remember as we were walking through this kind of plant tour when the early days when he was getting his facility off the ground, we spent a considerable amount of time. I thought we were going to talk a lot more about the electronics and all this other stuff. We ended up talking a lot about water. And we talked
Hmm.
about the quality of it and the things that you have to do to it, and the fact that you can't drink the water that they put in their thing, or something bad will happen to your body. And like, I guess my mind just kind of like, I didn't, it just kind of expanded a little bit, because it was like, well, so you've got to process the thing that comes out of the tap in order to make it better for this process. And it sounds like that's kind of a lot of what you guys do. So could you explain that process to me and help
Sure.
me understand?
Sure. So where he's operating, he's say in the semiconductor wafer business, you have all these little tiny circuits that are really close together. And in that space, and to be perfectly honest, the semiconductor space, probably not where he's at, but say like an Intel plant or something like that, would have these ridiculously tiny circuits. The water that they make in those plants is probably the closest thing to H2O that there is in existence. It is the purest water.
That's some high
And
quality H2O, right?
it's some yeah, exactly. um, Sorry, I just want to talk about shampoo and conditioner all of a sudden.
Shampoo
Uh,
is better. Dude,
uh,
there's so many like water boy like references I was thinking about before we started before
yeah.
we started talking today. I'm not lying.
Yeah, sorry, I don't have them all on the top of my head, but anyway, so ultimately, what you're trying to do is they have to get any impurity off of the surfaces of these materials, because any potential impurity could, say, be conductive from one element to the next and cause problems, and then that circuit's no good, right? That wafer's no good, whatever. And like everything has to be out of that water. If it's not, the water could actually contribute the same problem that they're trying to get rid of, right? So in your water that you drink, you don't think about it, you don't care, there's salt, right? Just a little bit. It's not like salt water like you'd rinse your mouth out with, it's just little bits. Well, if you put that on a wafer, you're going to have big problems and you're going to basically ruin it. So when they have to wash these things, that has to go away. And so you have to use a whole bunch of different steps to get the water in a position where it's able to do that, to remove all the different elements from that water. In some cases, all the way down to removing gases like oxygen and stuff like that, where, I mean, how do you remove oxygen from water, right? It's just part of it, right? Dissolved oxygen. It's just part of what it is. That's how fish breathe. But there are processes for every step along the way.
Okay. So you're there's a couple things here. First, like you said that there's stuff that's in our water that we drink every day. I know that's kind of a hot topic. And then geographically,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, what is in our drinking water is different. Depending
Mm-hmm.
on where you are or what decisions have been made by political pundits or people in those areas. But like, my father-in-law, for instance, is really skeptical when it comes to Idaho, and I'm on city water. And he's like, I don't want to
Yeah.
drink that city water. Do you have a perspective on like the water that we drink, like naturally out of the faucet?
I do. Well, first off, so I have a big piece of property and I'm New Hampshire. So I have a well,
Yeah.
right? I don't have city water. So my water actually isn't treated at all. There's nothing. I mean, it comes in, I don't have a softener, anything. Is probably some things I probably should put, but I don't. So I think a lot of times people look at water that you're going to drink or that's coming to you, and they're just always skeptical about like the chemicals that are
The
put in it, right?
fluoride.
Everybody's so worried about fluoride or chlorine. I mean, those are probably the two that we add to water that people get worried about. And I mean, I guess you could. I would think that we'd have a much larger issue, wide scale
Yeah.
everywhere, if these things were truly that big of a deal. And they really aren't, just super trace amounts. I mean, the chlorine, like chlorine, or there's a couple different type of products that we put in water at the beginning of processes to try to make sure that bacteria doesn't proliferate in a system, and sodium hypochlorite, or chloramines, or these things that we put in there to do that. I mean, we're putting them in less than 1 ppm, like really, really small amounts. And they're not these weird, crazy substances. And fluoride, again, very small. I don't have fluoride in my water because I have a well. I know I had it when I was a kid. I never had issues. I don't know. I don't feel like people are controlling my mind because I had fluoride in my water. So, I mean, I've read some of the crazy about it.
Yeah.
I don't really think it's an issue.
Okay.
And it's everywhere. So we'd have a much bigger issue.
No, for sure. And I know it's not necessarily your area for sure, but
No.
I'd love to get that perspective as well, though. It's just, that's what the show's all about, is kind of expanding that perspective. I tend to be one of those people, is I feel guilty every time I drink out of the tap. I'm like, man, I'm just gonna drinking this mind control juice.
I will tell you, because I live on unchlorinated water, whenever I stay in hotels when I travel for work, and
Yeah.
I'm always like chlorine sticks out so much to me in the
Oh,
water. I
sure.
taste it so bad. So
Well, shoot. So you're, we started talking about the uses in pharma. We talked about silicone manufacturing, but like let's dive in. Like, there's some really interesting industries here that are critical to the way that we live our lives, and maybe we should talk about the one that's probably on the top of everybody's mind is like pharmaceuticals. I mean, there's
Yep.
vaccine production. There's all kinds of like medication production, things that are happening, I imagine, with water. I know very little about it, but can you introduce me to kind of what's going on in the world around us?
Yeah. So, pharmaceutical manufacturing, there's a million different ways that can be looked at. And vaccine manufacturing is the obvious big one right now, right? Everybody's been talking about it for the last couple of years. I'm very active in that space. I have manufacturers right up the street from me that are, doing the COVID vaccine. We have, in the Cambridge space up here in the Boston area, they're coming up with new stuff every single day. It's mind blowing, some of the stuff that they're coming up with. There's the new space that is really hot right now is called cell and gene therapy. And I mean, some of the stuff that they're coming up with in cell and gene therapy, it really is it feels Star Trekky. Like they're literally reversing disease. It's not like a medicine that goes in and breaks something. It's something that and breaks it down and gets rid of it. It's something that goes in and fixes your DNA and helps reverse, the problems, right? There's a company that's doing something that's curing genetic blindness right now. That to me is a little bit much. So a kid is born with sight, but because of their genetics, they slowly go blind over time. And this is going in, altering that DNA, and then and it's coming back. It's amazing. It's amazing what we're able to do in medicine now. And I've heard it said that if some of the stuff that we made back in the 80s and 90s from a drug perspective was like building a matchbox, right? The stuff that we're making now is like building a space shuttle.
Yeah.
That's the complexity of it and all that goes into making some of these new medicines.
Yeah, it's I've worked in the healthcare space the majority of my career in one capacity or another. And I heard a stat once. I was in a room full of clinicians, and they were talking about innovations in medicine. And I can't remember exactly the context of this particular presentation, but one of the slides offered up the idea that if we had basic antiseptics, a knowledge of infection prevention, and gloves, that it would have saved like 90% of people during the Civil War or something crazy like that. It was insane. So then now I think about like, what is that perspective put in today? So like 20, 30 years from now, they're going to look at us and go, if they would have just had, this particular therapy or this and that, like these people live through blindness. These people live through, pneumonia, all these different things that, are preventable 30 years down the road.
Yeah. And when you look at, so the majority of people, when we think about medicine, we still think about antibiotics or Advil or, very, very basic medicines to deal with the stuff that everybody just deals with on a daily basis, or even something like cancer or heart, something for heart attacks to lower blood pressure, things like that, diabetes, some of these big, huge diseases. But what's so cool about the new stuff isn't really, it's not about everybody. It's about all these little niches with these rare diseases that most people have just suffered with, and they've just managed symptoms until they die. We're able to come up with like a personalized cure for that individual person based on their exact DNA and the stuff that they're suffering from. That's where we're going right now. And I mean, if there's something that gets me excited, yes, I do water, but what's super excited is I get to work in this world that's what's happening every day.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, that's pretty mind blowing.
What's typically happening to water in the manufacturing of drugs? Is it like, what do you do to it to get it ready to be the good stuff?
Right. So in pharma, kind of like semiconductor, it has to be super pure. And it's used for a lot of different things. So, in a manufacturing environment, just like in you're using it for washing, right? You have all this equipment that needs to be perfect and clean all the time because you don't want biological substances left over from a previous process when they go to do it the next time, right? Because, mold can grow and mildew and any kind of number of other things that could go with that. So water is being used to knock that down. It's also being used as part of the product itself, right? If you're mixing a liquid that goes in a vial, right, in a vaccine, there's a little vial they're going to squirt in your arm that's got water in it, because that's how you mix all the different ingredients together. So that's what ultimately it's being used for. And in the pharma space, you're making it with a few different products. The big ones we're talking about are to make something called water for injection. If you've ever heard that term, I don't know. We refer to it as WIFI, water for injection. And there's a couple different ways that you do it. Historically, it's been made using like a heat process or like a phase change process. You have water, like you have water on your stove, right? And you boil it and it turns into steam and it just makes, driplets on your microwave above or something. In a pharma space, we do a really high end version of that where it boils off and then you take that and then you recondense it back down into water. And what's left in the pan, if you will, is the impurities. And so there's a couple different ways of doing that. There's something called multiple effect distillation, which has been done for forever, which is exactly that. It's just boiling it off and recondensing it, boiling it off, recondensing,
It's like making liquor, but
it
like
is
without the alcohol in it, right?
It's a distiller. That's what it is. It's a distiller, right? So, yep. Some of the same equipment can actually be used, but in pharma, usually they just use higher end, super pure, or highly polished type materials to make sure nothing, gets stuck in the process. So that's one. And like my company, we do another process. It's also distillation. It's just a little bit different. And what we use is it's called a compressor, and you're boiling it off at a low pressure, and then you use the compressor to push that vapor back down into what we call distillate or back to water. It's a lot more energy efficient way to do the same exact thing. The temperatures are a lot lower. So it's a little bit more of a forgiving process, a more mechanical process, but the goal is to make this water using as little energy as possible while maintaining the same exact quality, because boiling it takes a ton of energy to boil water, right?
Yeah.
So, and when you're boiling, like some of these we have facilities that are making 1,000 gallons a minute of this water, right? That's a lot of water. So you need to do that as efficiently as you possibly can.
Wow.
So historically, that's how it's done.
Okay. And then, so, looking at a couple of these other industries as well. I mean, we were talking about oil and gas industries, there's military, there's industrial. You started this talking about submarines, like, and have to have clean water to drink. And then that just hurt my head for a second, because I think I always just assumed that like it was just, we just filter out the salt water and like they carry their own water. I guess I never even really thought about how people drank on a submarine.
Yeah, just bring their hydro flask and they're good to go, right?
Yeah,
it'll last. Yeah,
just come up for air and just dip it in the water and suck it through a life straw or something. I don't know.
Yeah, so when you talk about, say, like high salt or high salinity, high TD, total dissolved solids water, probably right now definitely the most common way of getting those solids or those salts out of the water is something called reverse osmosis. And so everybody's heard of RO, reverse osmosis. People have them under their sink, right, to take their gross water and try to make it taste good. It is energy wise probably the most efficient way to do it. And so all those boats, they got those kind of systems, and it can take ocean water and make it taste like normal drinking water. It's very effective at that. And it's basically these spiral wound. You take this tube and you put this membrane and you just, wind it up inside of this thing, and you're pushing the water in one end, and then on the other end, you have water that come out that's really salty, like extra salty, and then water that comes out, a lot more pure. And if you do a number of these in succession, you can turn salt water into drinking water. Interestingly enough, I'm up in New Hampshire and Vermont. It's actually one of the ways that they make maple syrup now too. They put the sap from the tree into one end of these things, and out comes kind of pure water, and out comes the the gross stuff, but the gross stuff is the maple syrup. So
Oh, so
it
they're
can
taking like kind of taking extra moisture or like the water out of it to make it like its most
exactly.
purest form.
So instead of just boiling it all day, they can do a pretty large percentage of the process with an RO membrane.
Wow.
So it's pretty neat process. And, you know, again, they use this in pretty much every industry. In your semiconductor plants, again, that's doing 95 to 98% of the work. If you go to a hospital, every hospital will have a little room that's making super clean water to, say, wash their instruments and their surgical, knives and
Yeah.
cannules and all that stuff.
Central sterile services.
Exactly.
Typically what
Yep.
that's called, right?
Yeah, that's what it is. So all these industries, most of them are using RO at some point because it does so much of the work at a very low amount of energy required to do that same work. And it's pretty low waste. You put salt water down the drain as a waste product is basically what you do.
Okay. Very good. And then, also, I mean, I wanted to get back to that, like the beverage space. I know, again, this is, it's just one of those things where you see so much like water and things like that, like marketed with like alkaline. And it's like the pH is really important when it comes to water and these types of things. I know that maybe for like an industrial application of water, they're going to do whatever they're going to do with the most clean byproduct. Like they're going to start making their changes. Do you have any thoughts on like that alkaline or like the pH, or like, do you talk about that or know anything about that at all?
And so I do. I think at this point, just because of what I'm exposed to, I'm always a little bit skeptical of those things.
Sure.
To make this water more pure. It's like it was kissed by the sun or something. And my son was with us all along. He just didn't know it.
Oh, hey, what's up, son?
He's getting his energy drink and walking down from Spanish class.
Dude, I love it.
So I'm always a little bit skeptical of those. I listen to all the health podcasts and stuff, and I hear people talk about, hydrogenated water and things, and alkalized water and things like that. I don't really buy into it.
Yeah.
I think you can have super acidic water that's unhealthy, right? Don't drink super acidic water, but regular water isn't super acidic. If you were to measure the pH of your water, it's probably like 8.5. I mean, it's very typical for city water supplies to be well over 7, which is your neutral pH. So it's not like you're drinking sulfuric acid in your water. So
oh, sure. That's it. And then, I love fun facts, man. You got any like perspectives or anything for us to just like, what don't we understand about the water around us, or the water that's used in the world, or maybe some industry that you were just blown away when you first found out like water is processed in a certain way?
yeah, this is maybe a little bit different, but I got 5 kids, right? And my oldest is turned 18 tomorrow, and my youngest is like 6. And we homeschool. And so one of the things that as a homeschool is you're hoping you don't screw your kids up too bad and that they're able to be good adults, right? You're like, I took them away from the normal and try to do something different. And eventually you have to let them go to be on their own, and you hope you didn't mess them up too much. And, my oldest is sort of trying to figure out what she wants to do for school. And she doesn't know. It's whatever, right? And I'm in the water space. And as I've been trying to sort of coach her on how to think about what she could do, just talking about water, right? I want you to understand how much is out there. I think something we said, I don't know if it was when we introed or not, but there's so much out there. The space that you can be involved in any industry is so wide. It's overwhelming, really, right? In the water space, if you think at its most basic level, what do most people know? They know the water that's coming in their tap. They know that it gets there through a pipe or something from somewhere, maybe in their town, maybe not. I'm close to Massachusetts, and they have this thing called MWRA, where they're drawing water from different reservoirs around the state, and it's delivering the majority of the water to the state, all one giant system of pipes and pumps and buildings and people and purification plants. And it's going all over the place. It's truly amazing how they can do that. So that's like the first exposure, right? And then maybe, and that's gajillions of dollars in business, right? What's going
Yeah.
on there, right? And then you have like your Brita water filter that you stick in your fridge, or maybe your fridge has one of those little built-in filters, right, that you're using. That is just a gigantic market. It's huge. It's, again, billions of dollars just for these little things, right? And then you go and you've done central sterile, right? Central sterile at a hospital. This is one little place where you use water. That, again, it's a very specialized marketplace that there's all kinds of jobs and specialties that
And
make just
autoclave
those.
machines and yeah.
Yeah. All those things. And there's a million specialties all within just that. Or in that same building on the top floor, there's probably some research going on, right? Where there's mice and stuff like that. Well, guess what? Mice get fed water from a from a special water system that's just making water for mice and rats. Again, it's its own specialty. It is amazing. And if you go across all these industries, and I'm in pharma and I'm making a certain kind of, even in pharma, there's like different kinds of waters and different kinds of level of quality that goes into that, right? So you have all these industries, and then inside of each one, there's all these components. And every one of those components, huge industries, all these specialties, all these different kinds of people that are engaged in every single instrument in that process, or say pump or gasket or piping. And I will just say, just when you think about the breadth of that and what's out there to do and be a part of, it's awesome. It's awesome. And to try to convince my kid, like, you don't have to pick the perfect thing. You're gonna spider web wherever you want. You can end up in a million different places, and at any point you can change direction, and there's more options than you could ever imagine to go in a different direction and still be okay. So anyways,
that's wonderful advice to give your kid, man. What a cool analogy. I mean, I'm going to steal that from you. Definitely. I've got a 8-year-old son, so, he's got some years till he's out of the house, but I think as we're getting closer to that, and there's the, like, what am I going to do? Like, how am I going to make my impact in the world? Like, how do I pick a direction or go to school and study? I think you're right. I think you got to put a marker out there and say, like, I'm inquisitive and interested in these types of spaces. And
yep.
I'm going to have to be happy with a journey that takes me through different repetitions or different ideas in that space.
Yeah. And I mean, it's funny. We were joking about it.
Hola.
Like, yeah, there he is. Yeah. See, he's coming back. We were joking about it. Like, I think, they're worried about making the wrong decision. And I just said, you're going to make the wrong decision. You're going to make a wrong decision here. Just accept that. Like, no big deal. Like, you're going to move on, and you're going to learn a bunch of stuff, and you're going to be like, I don't really want to do this. I really wanted to do this, because you just can't have exposure until you get there. Right. And so then you're just going to move over, and all that stuff is still good. You still learn, you still meet people. I mean, so much of everything we do is just about the people that we meet and the people we get to know. And, the stuff is just the details to make it all sort of spin.
Oh, 100%. As you were providing some good advice to your kids there, I can't help but notice the shirt that you've got on, that Live Legendary shirt.
See, I don't know if it shows up in here. I can't tell what my screen looks like. So
yes, no, there you go.
Yeah.
Shout out to the Dad Edge. Shout out to Larry Hagner, a friend of the podcast, personal friend as well. How'd you come across that group, man?
Well, so that's kind of how we connected.
Yeah.
So I'm always looking for ways to be a better guy, right? Like, in general, whether it's better at my job or better at, dealing with my kid doing Spanish next to me, just always trying to find new ways to do that. And I found this Dad Edge podcast. I thought it was kind of a goofy name. And
yeah,
I listened to a couple of them, and I don't know, first off, it wasn't a hokey thing. I mean, he's got some legit guests on there for sure.
Man, he's had some great guests on.
Yeah, some great ones for sure. And I like those. I can listen to like an interview with Jocko Willink over and over and over again, right? I mean, it's good every time. And
Oh, and by the way, Jocko is one of the coolest people on the planet, man. He's a I
did you
went up
get
to
to did you get to hang out with them at one of the events or something?
I went to the Origin camp in Maine. So
Oh, okay.
I did jujitsu out there for a number of days, and like 7 days last night. I'm going to go to the Origin camp this year again in
You
August.
say in Maine?
Yeah.
You probably drove right by my house, actually.
Well, I probably did. We flew into Portland,
Oh, okay,
Maine,
never mind.
and then we drove up to Camp Laurel, which is where his jujitsu camp is, or where Origins is, and obviously Jocko's a part of that company with Pete and Dedeco. But it's a yeah, man, I could listen to that guy talk all day. I could listen to him get fired up about leadership. And so to your point, like Larry's bringing on these really great, inspiring individuals. And as
Yep.
you're looking through the lens of leveling up, yeah, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. And I, I got to I heard you on his podcast, and
Yeah,
I was like, hey, this is good stuff. And I guess I don't take this the wrong way. I was like, this seems like a regular dude that's doing some cool stuff,
I
right?
am. That's the
All right.
beautiful.
Yeah.
I laugh about it all the time. I'm like, I'm a regular guy. Like, I wasn't a Navy SEAL. I'm not a
Yeah.
fitness model. I didn't I'm a business guy. I'm a good consultant. I
Yep.
run a successful consulting firm, but like, I'm not the be all end all entrepreneur coach either. So like, I'm totally a regular dude. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And anyways, I just appreciate that. And I mean, that's kind of how Larry comes across to me as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I liked it. I have really enjoyed when I listen to podcasts or read books, there's something to me that is really appealing about somebody that seems like a regular guy that is upping their game all the time.
Yeah.
Like that's what I like. Yeah. Jocko's awesome. He's a little bit larger than life because of he, the way he sort of come into the marketplace, he's a little bit larger than life. And there's other like writers, or I don't know, there's something different about a writer, or just somebody that's already so far above, if you listen to a billionaire, you're like, I can't really connect with that, right? It's so far away from my reality. But when you hear a dude that was just in sales and he's, has moved on, or he's this guy that's being an engineer and he came up with something fun on his own at home. I don't know. It's just a way to connect that I enjoy. And if it's pleasant to listen to and I can deal with their voice, on a podcast, then all the better.
No, to your point, like there's the reason I like Larry a lot. I'm a part of that Dad Edge group as well. I hop on calls all the time to try to be, listen to how other fathers are dealing with, situations in their life and reflect on how I'm, that's my time during the month where I focus on being a dad. And like, there's doing the work and there's working on the work. And like a lot of us go through life not working on the work. Like, how are we showing up in life as a husband, as a father, as, a friend? And can we be better in some meaningful way? And if you don't have that perspective to work on it, you're missing out on a huge opportunity to time collapse improvement because you're usually the person holding yourself back.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, you're never going to sort of reach the point where you've perfected fatherhood or you've perfected being a husband or whatever, right? You will always be improving. There is no arrival.
Yeah.
And you're just always trying to do something different. It's funny. So we're doing this thing right now. I got 5 kids. We're busy. We homeschool. My wife, we have 2 businesses. I'm working all the time. And we have screens, right? And I've as part of the Dad Edge group on like Facebook and stuff, I hear people ask that question all the time. Oh, what do you do with screens? What do you do? Right. So I convinced my kids to take the shortest month of the year off from screens. And obviously it's not off because we're on screens all day for school or work, but we're not, watching shows at night and nobody's reeling on Instagram for hours on end. And it's been really fun. Our evenings have turned into music, right? And games. And this is not new stuff. It's normal. Everybody is getting along better. Everybody's talking to each other nicer. It really is amazing because I think that we have this thing wired in us. Like we're always just waiting till the next chance we have to disappear into our little personal screen space. And it's been awesome. And all my kids I took a little video the other night, put it on Facebook, and it was like 10:30 or 11 at night, and my kids are playing music on the piano and guitar and singing, and they're happy. And I was like, man, I really want to be in bed right now because it's 11 and I have to get up. But this is awesome, right? This is awesome.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like, I think I need to do a better job as well of managing that. I think my wife and I, we talk about it often. We have like rules like, hey, no TV in the morning on school days. Like that's not going to happen. We're not doing that in our house. Like we have a handful of things that we do pretty good at, but still, like I get a report from how long my kid's been on Nintendo Switch, right? Because it has like an
Yep.
app, and like I'm thinking I'm letting him play for like 30 to 45 minutes. And this is no fault of his. This is a fault of mine. And then I get a report and it's like an hour and 45 minutes. It's like, oh, I'm completely losing track of time. Oh, I'm
Mm-hmm.
not, I'm not like staying on top of those types of things. And I recently moved my office from downstairs in my house to the upstairs. It's under construction right now. So like, if you really look, you can see there's two different colors of paint on the wall up here in the corner.
It's disturbing, but I'm getting past it.
No,
Yeah.
it was if you look down at this vent too, like the vent. If you're watching on
Oh, I see the
YouTube,
line. Yeah. Yeah.
you can see the line around the vent
Yeah.
because I'm not completely sold on this color, but we painted this wall because I've got podcasts to do, and I'm like, whatever. Painted it poorly. If you look around the rest of the room, there's like swatches of color all over the place and whatnot. But anyway, so I moved up here, and I have a couch up here and some other things, and I have a record player, and I hadn't been listening to all those things up there. Obviously, are the records I like playing, but I have more in storage. But I put on a Rush album and just sat down on the couch and let it play. Wasn't engaged in technology. Did not pick up my phone. Just sat and listened to music. And it had been a while since I'd done something like that. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
musician. I love listening to music. I love kind of just hearing the different, the rhythm part and just following the lead and just like, I enjoy it. And I hadn't sat with it. That night, I slept harder than I had slept as long as I can remember. And I think it's what it is I just allowed my body to relax and my brain to slow down and just
Mm-hmm.
enjoy the process of enjoying a good song and good music.
Yeah. I'm certain that works. And music has been since I was a kid. I played the piano when I was a kid, and I taught myself guitar as an adult. And there is nothing that beats it, for me, playing, singing, whatever. That's my favorite thing. And it takes everything away for a time, and
Yeah.
it just sort of brings everything into focus. And now my kids are older. You're not there yet, but you will be. Like if they do it with you, I will tell you, it is the best thing in the world for me. Last night, so I do like music at my church and stuff like that. I've always
Yeah.
led. And so we have like a youth group, all the teenagers. And so this year, what I've done is I've had my kids play with me, right? They're all at various skill levels. It can be risky. My kids, and then a couple of their friends, we have a little band. And last night, we did it, and I was like, I'm not playing guitar tonight. And so Luke, the kid that you just saw, he's been learning guitar, and he's been playing next to me. Like, so I'm the sort of the hard strummer, and he's sort of keeping up. And so
Yeah.
last night I was like, Luke, I'm not playing tonight. He's like, wait, I didn't even learn these songs all the way. And I'm like, dude, you got this. And I just played like a cajon while everybody else really played and sang. I didn't sing. It was awesome. Like I just sat in the middle, closed my eyes. I didn't make a sound. And he rose to it right then. Right. I will say this to any kids: force yourself into performance, and you will get better so much faster than if you're just
Yeah.
picking away in your living room trying to learn guitar or learn piano or learn drums. Or you force yourself to do it in front of people, and you will get better fast. Like you will get better in the moment. You will get better. And I got to watch that last night with him and my 18-year-old daughter leading and like sort of doing the talking in between songs. I was like, it's seriously like, it's like the best thing in the entire world for me. Not a close second.
I love it, man.
Yeah.
I love that so much, that being able to take a step back, reflect, beam with pride,
Oh
kind of
yeah.
know the
But pretend to
journey.
not beam with pride, by the way. Just pretend
Yeah.
that's totally cool. Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's totally what's expected. And then like inside you're just like screaming and
Yeah.
excited.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey man, you've got a lot going on. I want to talk about your podcast before we wrap up here.
Yep.
You've got the Modern BioPharma podcast. Who's that for? What are you talking about? What kind of guests are you having on your show?
Yeah. So it was sort of born out of COVID. So I'm in sales, right? And COVID started, and I had been traveling up and down the East Coast and to Europe. I'd go and visit clients, go and visit engineering firms, things like that. And you talk to them and do presentations and, bring people out to lunch. And all of a sudden I couldn't do it, you know, and people were like, oh, well, you should do webinars and stuff like that. And I was like, I don't want to do webinars.
Webinars can be tough, man.
Yeah,
This is
like
Jesse.
it's a weird.
Today we're going to talk about blah blah blah. Click.
Yeah, it's weird. And my favorite webinars, you really have to have like compelling stuff. And I was like, I don't know, is that our products? Is that really what we want? So I was like, hey, why don't I just try to have conversations, right? And maybe they're sort of on the edges of the actual stuff that I sell and do, but they're in that space. So I literally just reached out to like 10 people, local. I was like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? Here's some questions. And they're like, yeah, sure. And everybody was pretty cool at the beginning of COVID because nobody knew what to do. And so it started out, and it's been great. It's not like this, wildly crazy successful thing. I'm not expecting to ever get 1 million downloads like Joe Rogan because I'm talking to engineers in pharma.
Yeah.
That's it. That's who I'm talking to, is engineers that work in facilities that make drugs. It's a pretty niche market, right?
Yeah.
So if I can get 200, 500 people to listen, I'm, as far as I'm concerned, I'm killing it, because I'll never do that, going from building to building, trying to talk to people as a sales guy. And it's just really opened up, this space for me as far as just getting to meet people. People are coming to me to want to talk about things now, instead of, again, I'm a sales guy, always basically knocking on virtual doors. So it's been really neat. I'm excited about this year. It all started with me reaching out to people and say, hey, I want to just talk about stuff. I don't even know what, right? And now I'm like, all right, I have people that reach out to me and like, what is the best thing to talk about? What is the best person to talk with? And I feel like I have a few more options. Again, when I started, I was like, I'm going to run out of stuff to talk about. That's what it felt like. Right.
No.
And I've listened to enough podcasts, read enough books to know the more you do something, the more you realize there's an infinite number of things. So I'm excited about the potential for this year. My next guest is going to be talking about artificial intelligence in pharma. Like, I don't know anything about it, but here goes. Let's see,
It's, the thing that I tell people all the time as well is, like, I started the podcast out of COVID for similar reasons. Like, there was some boredom there. I'm an intellectually curious person. I used to be on airplanes all the time. I guarantee you, if I sat next to you and I was flying back home and I had at least maybe one cocktail in me, we were talking about your grandkids, like, for sure, 100%. Like, we're doing this. And so, like,
so they're annoyed with you like they're annoyed with me, I guess, on the airplane, huh? I think I'm just a lot wider than you, so it's probably no good.
Yeah, but what, it's funny, but the reality is I would be very open to having conversations. I wouldn't shy away from them. I wanted to ask questions. In the first 6 to 9 months of COVID, I didn't get an opportunity to ask people from diverse backgrounds, strangers, people I'd never met, people that have cool experience. I never got to talk to them. And so for me, being able to come across people like you and to be able to have this conversation, I'm in heaven, because I'm in my playground. I'm finding words for things. I'm finding ways to ask questions. I get to listen to these and be like, oh, dude, you're so clunky in these areas. Like, why'd you ask that way? Like, oh, you missed an opportunity to do this. It's fun. And so I imagine for you, being industry specific, this has kind of got to be a playground too. Like, you're probably finding those words to describe things and ask questions and ask insightful questions are just going to make you that much better at what you do.
It is. And I'll tell, it's funny because I have to edit my stuff, right? I can't, I wish I could, I'm just not there yet. And I don't feel like it serves my guests necessarily to just, click publish right when I'm done. But I mean, I've gotten in the middle of podcasts and I'm like, blink. I have no idea what I'm supposed to ask you next, because that went so far over my head. I'm so lost right now.
And for sure.
And if it was just personal questions, I can keep it, there's a banter to it. But when you get technical at all, it's yeah, again, I get over my head really easy, but it's been super fun. I'm excited to do more of it. And I just feel like it helps. So one other really interesting thing is in my space, it's very serious, right?
Yeah.
Everything is serious. Everything is, help the patient, don't hurt the patient. And obviously there's a ton of value there, right? But what ends up happening is in the day-to-day interactions that we all have, it's like, I feel like everybody takes themselves just a little too seriously.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I've worked at, and I'm continuing, when I talk to guests ahead of time, like, hey, I'd like to do this, I want to hear people talk about when things haven't gone well, right? Like make fun of yourself a little bit. Like, it's not a big deal. Like, people will like you better if they know you're not a robot.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm searching for that a little bit. I'm searching more actively to find the personality in the engineer space, because I know they got them right, but it's difficult. Nobody wants to ever be viewed as potentially wrong, right? Ever.
No.
So I don't know. I got any advice on that one? Let me know. How do you dig for good stories rather than just success all the time and how
Yeah.
wonderful everything is?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm always trying to figure that one out as well. Is because the difficult thing about having guests on that you don't know deeply is that you haven't built a rapport in order to be asking that question from a standpoint that seems to be inquisitive and not,
Right.
one accusatory or one that automatically puts them on the defensive.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of times if my guest has a lot of experience being on a podcast, I'll go and dig for those types of questions because I'm sure they've
Right.
been asked them before and they kind of
Yep.
know the nature of the roles. Otherwise, I kind of shy away from it.
Yeah, that's fair. I basically put it out like in my first email, like, I would love for you to do this, right?
Yeah,
Please, 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 please. Everybody wants to hear that somebody else messes up and not just them, and they're not allowed to say
yeah,
anything, right?
for sure, man.
Yeah.
Hey, well, as we're coming up on time here, man, where do people find you? Where do they find your podcast?
Yeah. So, I mean, the best place to find me is LinkedIn. I mean, that's kind of where I live in the professional world. So just look up Jesse McLaughlin on LinkedIn. You'll find me. And my podcast is pretty much anywhere you listen to podcasts now. I use Anchor. So you press publish and it goes to all of them.
Yeah,
And so Modern BioPharma podcast, you look me up, you'll find my face. And, love to connect to people on LinkedIn. It's always great to just see different people, different industries, and see where people are at. And, if anybody happens to listen to this that works in the pharma space and wants to do an episode on the podcast, I'd love to do it.
I love it, man. Hey, Jesse, I appreciate you spending some time with me today. I appreciate your knowledge, your expertise, your perspectives on life. And until you and I get an opportunity to chat again, my friend, I appreciate your time.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, Jake.
Cheers.